Hello, welcome to today's tutorial. Today, we're going to create this design together. We've prepared this layout in advance, and you can also get this pack, which includes various designs, for free from our website. As you can see, this design has been layered for animation purposes in Illustrator. The only thing you need to do is select the Release to Layers sequence option in the Layer options. With this method, all sublayers will be converted into separate layers, and then we remove them from the main layer. Finally, make sure to set all layers to the Select mode. In After Effects, start by creating a composition. The Overlord extension is one of the best options to easily import Illustrator layers and text into After Effects without any issues. Since we've selected all layers in Illustrator, you just need to choose the Pull Selection from AI option to import all the selected layers into After Effects as shape layers. However, there's an issue here. If you look closely, you'll notice that the text above has been removed from its original state and it's not written in a semicircular shape. As you can see, there's a mask on this layer, and the text should be placed on this mask's path. To achieve this, open the Text options, and then in the Path options, set the path to Mask 1. This way, the text will follow the path, and you only need to position it back in its original place. In this case, the letter T is slightly lower, so adjust the first margin settings to move the letters backward a bit. Let's start animating. We usually begin with larger layers. So, for ease of work, turn off all unnecessary layers and focus on the frame layer. To animate the frame, we need to animate the path. Enable the stopwatch icon, which allows you to set the final keyframe or end pose. For the initial pose, adjust the shape's points accordingly. Right-click on the keyframes, choose Keyframe Assistant, and select Easy Ease. To control the animation speed, use the speed graph, making the start fast and the end smoother. Since transforming this shape into a straight line isn't straightforward, let's use a trick. Create a rounded rectangle of the same size as the initial pose and set its height to 0 in the rectangle path options. Move the keyframe slightly ahead, and at the beginning, create another keyframe with 0 width. Then we place the last keyframe of the top layer in line with the first keyframe of the bottom layer. In the Speed Graph Editor, we adjust the start and end speeds of the keyframes. By naming the layers, we can manage them better. Now let's move on to the trim paths layer. Click on Add next to Contents and select Trim Paths. With the Offset option, we can give infinite motion to the trim paths. To do this, hold the Alt key and click on the stopwatch. In the expression section, type time*10. Keep in mind that the larger the number, the faster the animation will be. It seems we might need to reduce the speed a bit. Then, to form the trim paths, set the in keyframe to go from 0 to 100. You can also use the F9 key to ease the keyframes. To animate the hand, we need to define points for movement using the puppet pin tool. However, as you can see, when we apply pinning, we encounter an issue. The problem arises because puppet pin doesn't work well with shape and vector layers. Therefore, we need to place it in a pre-composition and then apply pins to it. Inside the composition, specify the region of interest for the image, and select Crop Comp to Region of Interest from the Composition menu. For animating the hand, add keyframes to its position property. Determine the final position and initially lower it slightly. To give a springy effect, insert a keyframe between two others and position the hand slightly above the final position. In the graph editor, work on easing and adjusting the animation speed. Aim for a high speed at the beginning, gradually slowing down as it moves upward, and then easing it down a bit towards the end. Now let's move on to puppet pin. We place one pin on the fingertip and 2 pins on the lower part of the hand to keep it stable. By pressing the U key on the keyboard, we can view all active keyframes on the layer. We delete the 2 keyframes related to the lower hand pins since we don't need to animate them. Next, we ease the keyframes using F9 and align puppet keyframes to position keyframes. At the start of the hand movement, we slightly lower the fingertip, and in the middle of the movement, we position it slightly higher than the final position. To achieve a spring-like effect, we move the puppet pin keyframes 2 frames ahead. For further exaggeration, we can add an extra movement before the last keyframe, bringing the fingertip even lower than the final position. Then, in the graph editor, adjust the speed smoothness as shown. Now we've prepared a cool hand animation. Let's make the hand appear inside the main frame. For this, we need to mask it. Using the rectangle tool, create a shape with the appropriate size and placement for the hand. Name it Mask. In the track matte section, connect the hand to the mask layer. Here we need to invert the mask mode to fully cover the hand. Next, we define the boundary where the hand comes out from inside. Using the pen tool and selecting the stroke mode, specify the border. In the layer settings and stroke settings, set the line cap to round cap. Then, for animation, click Add in the Content section and choose Trim Path. To animate the line from the center, set the start and end keyframes to 50, and the final start keyframe to 0, and the final end keyframe to 100. Adjust the animation so that when the hand emerges, the line fully covers it, and after the hand is fully out, the line closes. To achieve this, copy and paste the initial keyframes. Then, adjust the timing in the speed graph as shown. Finally, name the layer. Now it's time for the star animation. We select one of the stars and display its scale settings by pressing the S key. Enabling the stopwatch for the keyframe, we move it slightly forward to set it as the final state. Just before that, we reduce the star size by adjusting the scale. Next, we copy and paste the first keyframe ahead and modify the animation speed and smoothness in the graph editor as shown. To control the star's visibility, we use opacity. Press the T key to access the opacity settings. If you want multiple settings side by side, hold down the Shift key and press the desired keys, for example Shift plus T. Set the opacity to 0 at the start of the star animation, from 0% to 100%, and similarly, set it from 100% to 0% at the end of the animation. Keep in mind that we want this star animation to loop, so we need a pause between the end and the beginning. To achieve this, move approximately 10 frames forward and copy the last keyframes. Now, to create the loop, hold down the Alt key and click on the stopwatch for the star scale. This reveals the expressions section, where we type loop out to make the animation loop from the last keyframe. Repeat the same process for opacity. Now, while holding Shift, select both the scale and opacity keyframes, copy them, and paste them onto the other star layers, Ctrl plus C, Ctrl plus V. As you can see, all keyframes and expressions have been transferred to these layers. To ensure that the star animations don't occur simultaneously, select the keyframes of the underlying star layers and move them 3 frames ahead. Don't forget to save your project. To animate text appearing from above the frame, select the text layer and open the text settings. Click the arrow next to Animate and various options will appear. Choose Opacity. Set it to 0. In the Range Selector section, adjust the start and end opacity range for the letters. Specify the start and end keyframes. And then set the smoothness to 0. You can fine-tune the animation smoothness in the graph editor. Finally, to make the letters form from the top of the frame, explore the first margin settings in the Path Options section. We activate the first margin keyframe and place it as the last keyframe. Then, we increase the first margin value until the letter A is precisely centered at the top. In the graph editor, adjust the start and end speeds according to the image. To animate the lower stars, similar to the previous ones, we enable the scale keyframe and bring the first keyframe slightly downward, reducing the scale value. In this case, the letter T is slightly lower and disrupts the animation. Therefore, the best approach is to remove any extra path points. Deleting these extra points will improve the animation. Continuing with the star animation, to create a loop at the end of the scale, we copy the first keyframe and adjust the animation smoothness in the graph editor. Then, following the same method as before, in the Scales Expression section, we input Loop Out. Here, we want the star to turn on only once, so there's no need for opacity looping. Set the opacity to one frame, from 0% to 100%. Next, select both scale and opacity keyframes, copy them, and paste them onto the other star layers. As you can see, all keyframes and expressions are copied. Move the keyframes of the two lower stars slightly forward. Now, for animating the two sidelines, we'll use Trim Path. The line should form from the top and move downward. To achieve this, set the start value from 100% to 0%. To copy this animation to the left line, simply copy the trim path and paste it onto the desired layer. However, as you can see, the animation for the left line is currently moving from bottom to top. To correct this, open the Content section and in Group 1, change the Right to Left option to Left to Right. To animate the thank you text similar to the previous one, in the Animate section, select the opacity option and proceed as before. In the Advanced section, set the smoothness to 0. Our animation is almost complete, but we want to add a vintage and cartoonish feel. To reduce the video's frame rate, create an adjustment layer and apply the posterized time effect from the Effects menu. You can decrease the value to 12 or 15 frames. Next, we need the fractal noise effect. With the layer selected, activate this effect by double-clicking on it. In the Fractal Type section, choose Terrain. Adjust the contrast and brightness until you achieve the desired effect. Now we've created a vintage film-like grain, and it's time to animate it. In the Evolution Options section, select the random seed with the Alt key to enter the Expressions area. Type time *6, and you'll see an animation with a lower frame rate and a cool effect. Then, in the Mode section, change the image mode to screen. As you can see, after applying the fractal noise to this layer, the posterized time effect no longer displays its changes. To fix this, create another adjustment layer and apply the posterized time effect to it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Until next time.